All right, let's head on to headline number 3, Chris.
This is big.
So headline number 3 is that Dave Jameson at HuffPost is reporting that Starbucks may have fired several workers in Memphis, Tennessee, who are part of the growing unionization effort surrounding the company. Now, listeners, pay close attention because there's a lot of detail here. So first, the Starbucks Workers United said on Tuesday on Twitter that the company had canned, quote, virtually the entire union leadership in Memphis, end quote, calling it a case of retaliation for their union support. Now, Reggie Borges, who is the Starbucks spokesperson, replied saying that the company did not fire workers for organizing, but instead for violating safety and security protocols. He said that those were that the workers opened the locked store after close of business without permission and let non-employees in. So now we have Richard Bensinger, who's a longtime organizer involved in the Starbucks unionization campaign, said on Twitter that the workers were fired for, quote, talking to local TV reporters in the store, end quote.
Yeah.
One more thing. So
it gets saucier even more.
This is like a retail telenovela.
Yeah, this is crazy.
So then Nikki Taylor, a shift supervisor at the store, said in a statement through the union that she was, quote, fired by Starbucks today for policies that I've never heard of before, end quote. She also called the firing a, quote, clear attempt by Starbucks to retaliate, end quote. Now, Chris, as if this headline wasn't heady enough, this is also where A&M is going to put you on the spot, Chris. So Chris, A&M wants to know,
labor unions,
given all of this discussion with labor shortages, minimum wage pressure, and the looming threat of automation, how should people be thinking about the friction between Starbucks and their biggest union in Memphis?
Whoa. Okay. Well, all right. Wow. Well, I think they've got to be taking this really seriously, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think this is a big deal. And I say that from two perspectives. I say that one as a historian, for those that don't know, right? Wait for it. But
this headline was already long enough. We can't get too far into history.
This is important, and I was a history major in college, believe it or not.
Yes.
And one of the subjects that I studied was actually labor history. It was 18th century labor history.
Oh my God. I'm already
the great Professor Karen Soslak. I'm sure she's not listening, probably has no idea even of this program. But yeah, it was a core tenet of what I learned at school. The second piece of this is I was actually a district manager for Target and store manager for Target. So I have some experience to this. And so I can see both sides of the argument that Starbucks is saying, because if what Starbucks is saying is true, that's definitely grounds for firing people, because that's probably outside the policy and it's probably written somewhere. Whether it's explicitly stated in the training is another thing. But at the end of the day, what I think this speaks to, and A&M gets to it in their question, is there's a lot going on right now. You've got being a frontline worker at a retail operation is not a job that people are wanting to do as much anymore. Hence, there's a labor shortage. And meanwhile, in the backdrop, all the HQ headquarters fat cats, and I call them that particularly for a reason, are reaping the benefits of all the work they're doing day in and day out. You look at, all the stories in the media of just the earnings that these companies are bringing home, the stock prices, bonuses. They're getting rewarded on the backs of these workers' efforts. And I think the workers that are still there who haven't gone and resigned through the Great Resignation are saying to the world, like, we want some of that back. And I think they have every right to try to claw that back and to take the steps to do that. And so I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And I bring up the historical analogy because it feels a little like what's happening now to me is what happened after the dawn of the Industrial Revolution with the railroads. The railroads, the oil companies, they got fat. They pissed off the workers, and the workers united, and that gave us the labor union movement that we still have today. And so I think that's now happening with tech. And I think it's quite likely, given the continued proliferation of tech with automation, that you're going to see more and more of this. We've seen it at Starbucks in Buffalo, in addition to Memphis, Alabama, and unionization efforts with Amazon in their warehouses. It's going to keep happening. And so I think retailers need to be more cognizant of this than ever before. That's my take on it.
And Chris Walton will be available on a PBS Frontline special tonight on the labor shortages of 1800 and how the railroad workers unionized.
There'd probably be an article comparing it. If I had time, I'd probably go into very explicit ties of the two things. But
well, not to make light of this, because I think you're right, Chris. You do bring up some really good points about pandemic employees and really, justifying their request for safer working environments and higher pay, which is what they're being asked to do, especially when the jobs that they're faced with are not just the typical tasks of running and operating as a Starbucks barista here, but enforcing mask mandates, dealing with confrontational customers because of those kinds of things. Like, there's a lot going on, especially from the last year. However, I'm going to pull out the part where A&M is talking about investment in automation to do these jobs, because I do think that we're going to start to see retailers investing more heavily, especially in the QSR space, in automation to do some of these jobs, and probably having fewer employees in the store. We saw this when we went to Amazon and Starbucks in New York,
100%.
where, the woman who used to run this high volume, Queens Starbucks is now running the Amazon Starbucks experiences, which is highly automated. And she said, like, we have fewer people here. My job is still to greet the customers, but it's not about, taking orders, making coffee. It's just, making sure that people know how to use the store. And that doesn't require, 16 people on staff. So I do think we're going to start to see, a change in the role of the associate in store, probably getting higher pay because of the higher touch points that they're having with customers, but fewer employees in that environment. So
that's an awesome point, but it actually makes me think that the problem will become even more pronounced.
Really?
Yeah, because if you start, you're right. The automatic solution that retailers are going to deploy is more automation.
Mm-hmm.
The workers that are left, which there still will be,
yes,
are going to get more frustrated. And on the backdrop of this week too, Amazon announces they're increasing their base cash compensation at their headquarters by double.
Right.
Double.
And increasing the cost of Prime. So they have a lot of money coming.
Right. And so yes, the workers, in my opinion, there's, for lack of a better way to segue to the next story, and on this Starbucks story, there is trouble a brewing. And
oh my